is Kathy Bechtel with Italiaoutdoors Food and Wine, and today we're making Italian olive bread or olive focaccia. I have here 2 1/4 cups of flour, 3/4 of a cup of warm water, 1 package or 2 1/2 teaspoons of yeast, 1/4 cup of olive oil, and 2 tablespoons salt. And we're going to start by putting most of the ingredients into the food processor. So here's the warm water. Next, I add the yeast. If you haven't used your yeast in a while, it would be a good idea at this point maybe just to give the food processor a quick pulse to combine, and then let your yeast and water sit for about 10 minutes, and it should get a little bit bubbly and frothy. And if nothing happens, your yeast is dead and you should start over again with new yeast. This yeast I used yesterday, so I know it's working, so I'm not going to go through that process. I'm going to continue to add the ingredients. This is 1/4 cup of olive oil, 2 tablespoons salt, and then finally I have 2 1/4 cups flour, but I'm not going to add all of the flour. I'm going to add most of it. Depending on where you live, how dry it is, how humid the air is, you might need more or less flour, and I want to keep the dough as moist as possible, so I have added probably about 80% of the flour here. Now we're going to pulse it a couple of times to form the dough. You see it's starting to come together, but it definitely needs more flour, so we'll add a little bit more. Pulse again. And we'll give it another check. It's formed itself into a ball, but it's still a little moist, so we're going to add a little bit more flour. And just a little bit more, and then we're going to let it go for about 3 minutes to knead the dough, 3 to 5 minutes. We want the food processor to be doing the kneading work rather than me. Now you want to be careful while you do this, because sometimes the food processors tend to walk off the counter, so I wouldn't leave it unattended. But it'll take about 3 to 5 minutes here. Okay, now that we've given it 3 to 5 minutes here in the food processor, I like to do the final little bit of kneading by hand on the countertop, just so I get a feel of the dough. And you want it to spring back, actually, when you're done kneading it. It should be nice and soft and smooth, and when you poke your finger in, it should spring back. And what we're going to do is we're going to let it rise for an hour. So I've got a bowl here. I've got a little bit of olive oil in the bowl. And we're going to put our dough in the bowl. Flip it over once so it gets coated a little bit with the olive oil. We're going to cover it up with a little bit of plastic wrap so it doesn't dry out, and put it in a warm place to rise for an hour. The dough has about doubled in size. That's what happens over the hour that we let it rise. What we're going to do is we're going to punch it down. And we're going to put it on the counter here. And we're going to divide it into 2 loaves. And I'm just going to eyeball it, pull it in half, like that, and then kind of just shape it by hand into 2. This is a rustic loaf, so it's, it doesn't need to be fancy. Just kind of roll it into a rounded shape. We'll form the second loaf in the same way. Just kind of pull and tug it a little bit to form it into a circular shape. We're just going to place it on a sheet pan, and we're going to let it rise again for another 30 minutes. So we're going to cover it with a little bit more plastic wrap. And put it back in that warm place to rise. Okay, we've given it another 30 minutes to rise. They're a little bit bigger. And what we're going to do is you can actually poke them a little bit with your fingers if you wish to give it kind of some indentations. We're going to drizzle some olive oil, more olive oil on the top. And then we're going to top it with some chopped olives. This is about a cup of chopped olives. And I probably won't need all of that. Okay, and I have a preheated oven at 350 degrees, and we're going to put them in the oven for about 45 minutes. We've just taken them out of the oven and we let them cool for a little bit, and now we're just going to cut and serve is all that remains to do. The nice thing about bread, something like this, is you could freeze that second loaf, and bread freezes particularly well. And we've just finished a great Italian olive bread, olive focaccia, with Kathy Bechtel of Italiaoutdoors Food and Wine.